Welcome everybody. Jon with Jon's Record Rack. You see Corey here with Just Add Vinyl. So what this is going to be is this is going to be a video podcast, or better yet, a vodcast. This will be the first episode of Vodcast Underground, and depending on how this goes, it may be the only episode of Vodcast Underground. So we'll see. But kind of our goal with this came to me, I don't know, months ago. And I brought it to Corey and said, hey, what if we did something like this? It doesn't have to be long, a 5-10 minute type of thing where we just discuss, music news, what we've been collecting, what we've been listening to, stuff going on in the community, and so on and so forth. So I'll turn it over to you so you can introduce yourself, and then we'll get started. Kind of what I want to talk about today before I turn it over is the Universal Music Fire. I know it's probably been discussed to death over the past 3 weeks on YouTube and, out in the community. But the more and more I read about it and hear about it, it makes me extremely angry that it was the lies. And we can get into that, as we get into this. So, Corey?
Hey guys, Corey here. YouTube channel is Just Add Vinyl. Jon approached me a couple months ago, like you said, to do a podcast. So we've been kind of working up a formula for this, and here we are. So excited to talk about this topic. Unfortunately, we're here talking about something like this, but we thought this would be a great way to have our first episode and get the discussion going on topics like this. So feel free to participate in the comments. Anytime we do a podcast, we'll come back and review those comments that you've left and maybe just go through some of the highlights. So thanks for supporting this. Share it with your friends, get in on the conversation, and let's talk music.
Yeah, let's do it. So we'll just jump right into it, man. We can get to maybe music news, maybe listening after this, since this will be the bulk of our topic. So we'll just jump right into the fire. So I came to know about it. I had obviously read a headline, and kind of skimmed past it. Oh, fire, master tapes. I didn't really think anything of it right away. I think it came to my email, and then I was listening to Sirius XM Volume. This was that all day, all talk, music talk channel, 24-hour, 24/7 music talk channel, and I think it was Eddie Trunk's show. And then that was in one of their news segments, and he just started talking about it. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought I saw something about this. And then I went back to my email, and then I saw an email from you with this same story. And I think the story was titled "The Day the Music Died." Forgive me, I can't remember the author of the guy who wrote that. But so I just...
New York Times.
Yeah, it was New York Times. So I just kind of poured through that, and I started reading this, and I was... like, is this real? This what? This can't be happening. Like, I didn't hear anything about this. And so I started doing some archival research, found out that there was a fire, and it was reported, but there was no really any losses. I think they reported maybe some film damage or something like that, but they didn't say anything about any major losses of master tapes or anything like that. It was kind of brushed under the rug as, no harm, no foul. Well, fast forward more than 10 years later, we find out that that's not actually the case. That it was
when did the fire happen?
Disaster.
2008?
Yeah, it was 2008. And, we start finding out all these classic historical recordings from historical recording labels that Universal owned have been lost. Master tapes had been lost forever, and that's pretty significant, especially for those of us who understand how the mastering and remastering and how that works when we're buying music, especially being a vinyl record collector as well, because if you're going to remaster something from a master tape, right, you got to have the master if you want it to be done properly. You can't remaster something that's already been EQ'd. I mean, you can't do that. You can, but it's not going to be a quality product. But they've been telling everybody, I mean, how many recordings have you purchased, remastered albums have you purchased over the last 10 years?
Who knows? But I know I'm going to look into it.
Oh, yeah.
And original, right on the sticker or somewhere in the notes, usually it says remastered from the original analog tapes. And I'm looking over the list here of some of the artists that have lost their recordings, from Audio Slave, 38 Special, Sheryl Crow, Bryan Adams. I mean, the list goes on and on. Beck. And I wonder, and I'll start to look this up and keep in touch with the forums, but it's definitely casted a shadow over the authenticity of these remasters.
Yeah, I mean, and for those of you who don't know, there's kind of 3 huge, massive record companies that remain, kind of in the wake of the internet, of the Napster, file sharing, all that stuff. You got, Universal, of course, and then you got Warner Brothers, and then you got Sony, right? And so right after this, I immediately started researching Sony and Warner and how they store their master tapes that they own. All that stuff's locked in, fireproof, waterproof, smoke-proof, people-proof vaults, as it should be. It's like, why did Universal, did they not care, right? They just stuff it in a room, shrink wrap it to a pallet, and stack it 3 high. I mean, it blows my mind. Yeah, the list. I mean, we're talking entire master recordings for Impulse Jazz. All of those just gone. I mean,
Chess.
Yeah, Chess.
Well.
Are you kidding me? So I got a couple records out. So like this right here, John Coltrane's Love Supreme. This is an original stereo copy.
Nice.
So hang on to your original copies, because if you want to get sound from the actual master recording, then it's going to have to be, the original CD, and how hopefully it was done before 2009, or these records, these original records. Another one, this one here, Super Unknown, Soundgarden. I've purchased not 1, but 3 Super Unknown reissues. The first one came out in 2014, and then I purchased a 200-gram one, I think, that came out maybe a year later, and then the one that just came out was Soundgarden's
The new one.
35th anniversary stuff. That stuff was done, and it was said to have been redone from the master tapes. Really?
So maybe they were redone from a copy or
Yeah,
or a
like,
digital transfer at some point. Who knows?
and
Not as advertised.
Right. We pay premium prices for this. I mean, these are not cheap. I'm not a wealthy individual. We're paying $30+ for these.
That's a good point.
And it just drives me crazy.
But you mentioned Soundgarden. I see where Soundgarden hold Steve Earle, the State of Tupac, as well as Tom Petty. They've filed a class action lawsuit,
Yep.
and I believe the Bryan Adams and Sheryl Crow is too. And the list is going to keep going on. But I mean, you figure that this happened in 2008, and they made a corporate decision not to even tell anybody until the artist came to them for the master tape. And then that didn't happen until years later, when I think Bryan Adams got this thing started based on the conversation we had with Doug Edwards, which I forgot to mention. We're going to have Doug Edwards is going to call in. He's an audio engineer with many decades in the recording business, and he works at Musical Records as a sound engineer on and off. But he has a lot of experience with the analog recordings, and we're going to get his opinions on the proper storage of master tapes, as well as were the master tapes even any good. I mean, some of these were going back to the 40s and 50s. Were they any good? And he's going to share, based on his experience, because I am not in the music business. He's going to share some of his experience with us and add to the conversation.
Yeah, that'll be huge. I'm actually really looking forward to that, because having someone who does this for a living, I mean, I know enough to be dangerous. Like you said, I don't work in the music business. I attempted to early on, right after I graduated from high school, so I have a little bit of a working knowledge, but nothing like an actual engineer. So he understands. Yeah, I didn't even think about that when you mentioned that. Yeah, are some of these oldest recordings? Yeah, are they any good? Because if it's put on acetate, that stuff has shelf life, and especially with the way it was stored, it wasn't preserved. So, Yeah, it'll be interesting. You were mentioning some of the artists when you're talking about like Soundgarden, Hole. I think Nirvana, Nevermind, Master was part of that. Temple of the Dog was part of that. That's gone. And then you mentioned the Tom Petty stuff. So I don't know if you've read his autobiography. It was done by Warren Zanes, who's a kind of a Petty biographer. Yeah, the Warren Zanes one came out like in 2016, so it's pretty recent. And he's a close friend, was a close friend of Tom Petty. His band toured with Tom Petty back in the day, back in the 80s. I'm drawing a blank on the name of his band. You'd know it if you saw the name. But in that book, it's pretty well known that Tom Petty fought MCA, right, in the late 70s, early 80s, to retain the rights to his copyright, to his master tapes. And he won that battle. And in that book, it was brought up, and I can't remember the chapter, but it was essentially brought up, so are you going to have, MCA store this stuff for you? And he's like, are you kidding me? After all this? So the word on the street that I heard is that he made copies of his masters, kept the masters, and gave MCA the copies. And at the time, MCA didn't realize they were the copies. They didn't even look at them. So I think artists like that are safe. We hope. So anyways, it's infuriating, and it's even worse that they've basically taken advantage of the public, people who buy this stuff, collect this stuff, get excited, for reissues. I know I do. Call me a nerd, call me a music nerd, whatever, but I get excited when I hear something's being remastered from the original tapes.
Oh yeah.
So it's unbelievable.
Yeah, so this isn't the only fire to ever happen. So I started looking at other fires and found some information on different forums. But there was an Atlantic Records fire in February 1978 in Long Branch, New Jersey. I don't know if I spelled correct, changed that, or if that was Long Beach, but it says Long Branch, New Jersey. And it was probably one of the most devastating losses up to that point. And so they really didn't learn their lessons from that either. But also I notice a reoccurring theme as I read these stories, that a story gets published and then someone from the record company comes out and says, oh, that's overblown. This is, you guys are overreacting. Yeah. Not much was lost. And it's so weird that 1978, you fast forward to 2008, and the similar thing has happened. So Universal had a fire in 1990. It was unrelated, but it wiped out a carelessly extinguished cigarette, destroyed a bunch of movie sets. And so I wonder what else was lost there as well. But check this out. So this is in 1990, not this situation. But they identified the security guard that extinguished the cigarette that caused the fire. They put him in jail for arson and put him in for a $1 million bond bail.
Are you kidding me? Wow. So just for improperly extinguishing a cigarette. Wow.
So I don't know what became of him. Obviously, I think he would have just been a suspect in arson, and once they cleared that, he probably got out. Yeah. But I mean, that's pretty serious. So I kind of wonder what's going to happen to the roofing company that came out and caused the fire. Are they going to say they followed all safety procedures, blah blah blah, and get off the hook, or is Universal, because Universal's going to get sued from all of these artists, and obviously they're a huge company. They're probably going to be able to take the blow. But I wonder how much of the blame is going to shift to that company as well. They might just shift all the blame to them. They go bankrupt and it's over, and Universal doesn't have to pay a penny. Yeah. I don't know how that stuff works.
That's probably what they're going to do. The contracting company, the contractor, I don't know who they were, but they were trying to repair the roof with a blowtorch. It's like, what? I mean, if you're going to use a blowtorch, I mean, I've worked on huge construction sites where if you're using anything with fire anywhere near roofs or flammable items, I mean, you're pretty well protected, and so is everything around it. So it sounds like they're just blowtorching away, right? Repairing holes in the roof, and ashes and burning rubble are probably falling down onto these pallets of master tapes below. I mean,
my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. And then, and I'm in the logistics industry, and one of our warehouses caught on fire due to the maintenance department was doing some welding. They were doing some welding to repair a dock plate, and it caught the dock canopy on fire, and it took off fast. And we recovered from it very quickly and responded. Fire department came and responded very quickly, and it was just a lot of smoke damage. But man, that thing took off really fast, and it was of course, they look at all the safety procedures. Did you wait long enough? So sparks had flown off the welding. While they were welding, sparks were sitting there burning, and then turned into a fire. You have the little bit of breeze, a little bit of a wind, and boom, the whole thing went up. So I could see how something like that could happen. It said, you read the news article. It said that they had waited the 1 hour or 2 hours after the job. So I wonder if that was long enough.
Yeah, for everything.
Apparently not.
Something that I was reading too just now, but earlier. What about all those artists for some of those classic labels like Chess and Impulse and some of the blues and jazz R&B labels, who had artists who maybe were lesser known artists who their stuff had never been put on CD or pressed to vinyl? This stuff's gone.
That's right, and that's the caveat that they lean on the most, is that, hey, all of this stuff is available digitally, it's on CDs, blah, blah, blah. But you're right, what about the lesser known artists? They've evaporated now, that culture, that music.
Erased. And the way that they talk about it, like it's no big deal. Like, the artists, they get properly compensated for the digital down. It's like, it's not about that. This is pieces of American history. Listen, if in the grand scheme of things, America, United States, has a relatively young history. We don't have a lot of classic history in this country. We just don't. I mean, we're the youngest country, arguably one of them in the world. So when you have something like this, music and literature, arts, film, whatever you want to call it, is such a huge part of our culture. And to just brush it away like, these people are getting paid. No harm, no foul. We have it digitally. You guys can stream it or download it, and it's not about that, right? I mean, you wouldn't store art like that.
No.
You wouldn't store Picasso paintings.
And it is art.
In a shrink wrapped to a pallet.
Or make a copy and say, oh, we've got plenty of copies of Picasso, Da Vinci. We've got plenty of copies of this stuff. Don't worry about it.
So,
like if you go to the Smithsonian, I hate to make those comparisons with Da Vinci and this,
I don't.
Recorded music, but it is that important to us. I think in the wide scheme of the world, it's not as that to that level, but it makes a dramatic comparison of how important it is to us. But look at the Smithsonian. You don't go to the Smithsonian to go see a copy of the Spirit of St. Louis. It's sitting there. You're seeing the original one. It's been restored. I mean, even in the restoration process, they even they shine it up to look really nice and silver. But they even left one piece of it yellowed, so you could see the it's preserved, not necessarily
right.
fixed up really nice. But you don't go there to go see a copy of that. The Bell X1 that broke the sound barrier, Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier for the first time in that Bell X1. You can go to the Smithsonian and see the original aircraft. It is preserved American history. I think of the Iron Mountain, where they have the huge archive of music and acetates, and that's pretty awesome. I'd like to visit that one day, but that's where they're doing it right. Don't you think the Iron Mountain is an example where the right people and the right companies are storing, and it is a huge expense to run that place. And but yeah, we needed more of this kind of stuff in Iron Mountain, not sitting on pallets inside of a warehouse underneath a bakery, non-temperature controlled, no humidity. With what did you say there was a bakery on top? And what did you say happened to some of the
place, bakery, something like that? I wish I could find I was trying to find the article where I read it.
Cake Boss. It was a Cake Boss facility upstairs.
The batter was like leaking through the floor and like dripping onto these pallets of master tapes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
And then also the Buddy Holly connection, which made the title "The Day the Music Burned." made that even more important or more
Yeah.
relevant, because not only did the day the music died when Buddy Holly passed away with Richie Valens and the Big Bopper and that horrible plane crash.
Yeah.
Now his music has burned up, and I thought that was really relevant to use. I don't know if it was by chance or not that they used that title, but Buddy Holly's music was destroyed in this fire as well.
So you mentioned at the beginning, Doug Edwards, your friend that you interviewed for that quick documentary you did. I think he's calling in right now if we want to take a break here and get his thoughts.
Good morning, Doug. How you doing? I'm doing all right. I'm gonna put you on speakerphone. How have you been? We haven't talked since we've done the video.
I know. I've been pretty good, actually. Hanging in there and doing photos.
Well, I won't keep you long. Thank you so much for calling. I was gonna talk to you about the it's in 2008 at Universal Studios. There was hundreds of thousands of songs and hundreds thousands of reels lost.
Basically, tape is petroleum and metal, and definitely goes up pretty quick. And but the other thing is, that, they have to be kept. That's what's surprising me is they have to be kept in a temperature, and especially humidity. Humidity is part of the thing on tape as well. You have to have kind of very dry, actually.
Now, in your opinion, what's the average life of a properly kept master reel? Like some of these reels are from the 40s and 50s. Would they have been any good anyway?
Yeah. And here's the thing: if they were stored perfectly, yes, they would still play on their own. And what we do now, like I've had dozens of tapes or more than that, they're actually old masters that have not been stored properly, and then when you put them on a tape machine, they just bulk up. It's called stiction, where it actually goes against the heads and leaves the backing on the head. The tapes basically won't play; they'll bind up. But the record companies, or not the record companies, but the tape manufacturers, I forget which one was, I believe Agfa, released a thing that tells you how to fix that problem by baking them in a dehumidifier. So you take a 2-inch 24-track master that won't play, and put it in a dehumidifier, and even said brand of dehumidifier, at 140 degrees for 24 hours, and then it'll play maybe once, maybe twice. So even if they had these old ones that probably wouldn't play correctly, they could have restored them that way. They could have baked them and then transferred them to digital. They would only play 1 or 2 times, and they're not usable again. You can't reuse the tape. But it's like that would be the proper way to store it.
Don't you think it's a tragedy that the amount of, it's a staggering loss of original masters, that even if they weren't, they could only be transferred maybe once or twice, sometime now or sometime in the future. Don't you think it would still be kind of cool or important to save an archive, save the original master tape? I mean, just like an original painting.
Hugely important. Technology comes and everything else, and you can improve on the things. I think it's hugely important to keep those. And they just blew it. I like none of them ever said about the fire, or I've never heard. You think we would have heard in the entertainment industry that there was a fire in a warehouse at United. Somebody would have known about it. Apparently they just kept their mouth shut, and they're still not answering. They admitted there was a fire, and that's it. They didn't say who or what, or made any calculations on that yet. They need to do that for sure.
Absolutely.
It's a horrible tragedy. It's unbelievable, actually. This original recording, are gone. I don't think they kept very many. Even when they did the backup, they usually kept them with the masters.
Well, exactly. That's what I was going to say. The safeties were kept with the masters, which is just asinine in my opinion.
Yeah, asinine. Totally asinine, except where they put them. Because it's hard enough to get involved. Get one of those volts, and it's expensive to keep that thing dehumidified, run that thing. So, at the correct temperatures and everything else. So, they did backups more as a thing, because sometimes you get dropouts on dates during the masters. And the original guys, they always made backups just safety after the project was done, in case anything happened to them. So it's a pretty big mess, no doubt about it.
Well, all right, Doug. I'm going to let you go. I've got this podcast rolling right now, and my friend's on the other line. So I really appreciate you taking the call and sharing, based on your long experience in the recording industry, your opinion on what's been going on here with the fire, as well as the the proper care and storage of master reels. So I really appreciate your time, Doug. I want to get caught up with you and hang out again sometime. Maybe come back to the studio.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll check out your podcast again and everything, and we'll definitely get together and try to go to the studio again. That was always a fun time. So
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, and say hi to your listeners for me. I'm glad they're interested in this. So, it's definitely a tragedy, and Universal, they're totally at fault. But, something just can't control, I guess. All right, I'll talk to you later, Corey.
Thank you, Doug. Take care.
Sure. Bye.
Bye. So that was some really good feedback from Doug Edwards, audio engineer. What did you think of the call, John?
Phenomenal. That's, kind of to have a professional, right, who really understands the process, not only about making music, but how you store that stuff and preserve master tapes. I thought it was really interesting, just talking about some of the stuff that, may have only been able to be played one or two more times, right, before the tapes fell apart. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to find, if that stuff was destroyed or if they were even any good anymore. And that was a really good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, hopefully the audio comes through okay. I had to put them on speakerphone there, but I'll try and clean it up as much as possible. And yeah, I think that really added to the discussion.
Yep, absolutely. This is going to get crazy. Depending on how they go about this, right, they try to shift the blame. I don't see how Universal Music Group can survive something like this.
That's interesting. I see them as just such a big company, big conglomerate, that this will just, but you make an interesting point. If they don't survive this, it'll really add to the magnitude of what this really is about. I can't wait to see how that turns out. But I do know that they've put together what they call Project Phoenix. The Project Phoenix is a recovery effort where they're going to be scouring and trying to find backup tapes and try to put a lot of this together. And they'll probably do that to cover their own butts, so they can get masters or safeties back to the artist. So maybe they're just doing that. They're not doing it because of their love for the music or what was lost. They're doing it to try and reduce mitigation.
Oh yeah, for sure, no question. It's funny. One of my buddies, we were chatting about this work friend, and he brought up the point. He's like, "Man, does Jimmy Page look like the smartest man in rock and roll?" Because he has all his master tapes stored in his house in a vault, and so every time a Zeppelin reissue, thing gets started, there's always pictures of Jimmy carrying these tins of master tapes into the recording studios, and it's pretty funny. But looking back, I mean, all that stuff would have been lost, because that's Atlantic. All that stuff would have been gone. So I bet you artists now are getting all their stuff, scrambling, right, to try and get their master tapes.
Hopefully we learn from this, and I say we as, hopefully these organizations, these companies learn from this. The artists certainly probably will keep better track of their real, their masters, even whether they own them or not. There's got to be a responsibility for the record company to have, protect those.
Well, that about covers it. I wanted to get into some inbox stuff and listening, but I don't think, we need to go that route. I think, we took up enough time, and I think it's a topic like this warrants really digging into. So, as I mentioned before, you guys watching it out there, really love to hear your thoughts on this, and then also your feedback on this first episode. If you liked it, didn't like it, would you continue to watch these? To make it worth making these, we'd love that if you would. And then also, moving forward, if it's a topic that we throw out there that you're passionate or interested in, and you want to jump on with me or with both of us, that would be awesome, and we can kind of do a joint call like we're doing here. That would be awesome, because I know you guys have so much insight and knowledge that we don't have, right? For different genres and bands and artists, musicians, topics, whatever, that I would love to have other quote unquote experts, talking.
Awesome, yeah, and thank you for having me on Vodcast Underground. Glad to be a part of this. This is my first time doing something like this, so hopefully everybody put up with me. Thanks for putting up with me for the duration of the episode, and definitely participate, leave a comment, and thanks for having me on, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. We'll talk to you next time.